Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my favorite half hour, sometimes 45 minutes of the week, the Bible Study Podcast. I'm your host, Pastor Curt Harlow of Bayside, Auburn, and we are, as always, or almost always, joined by the frontal lobe of Thrive College, Dena Davidson. How you doing, Dena?
I'm great.
Good.
Glad to be here.
Of course you're great, because we are joined by the one and only Josh Powers. Josh works on a spectacular team. He does something very important here at Bayside. Josh, this is your first time on the podcast?
Second.
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 Okay. Tell them, just remind them, second time, what do you do?
What I do is I'm the executive pastor at the Auburn campus. So I get to hang out with your Pastor Curt as often as possible and, straighten him out when his theology starts to stray a little bit.
That's pretty much every meeting. So, all right, we are in Ephesians 5. If you got your Bible, pull it out to Ephesians 5. We're going to start in verse 31. Now, if you're driving, don't pull your Bible out. But if you are, it's really important we set the context here because there's one statement Paul makes, and if you ignore that statement, you can get into all sorts of trouble, to our point we make every single week on this podcast: context, context, context. And that is found in verse 21, where Paul writes, submit one to another out of reverence for Christ. And you have this idea that every single instruction he's going to give comes from reverence for what Jesus has done for us. This is the whole theme of the first three chapters of Ephesians: God's love, God's commitment, God's unmeasurable love for us. Out of reverence for that, we submit. The word submit, we talked about it last week, is it's a military word for voluntary arrangement underneath. In other words, get in the spot in the army and get ready to fight together. If we organize ourselves well, we have a chance of winning. Dena, then Paul takes this shift. It's kind of he's got a reveal at the end here. After giving instructions for wives first, then for husbands, he goes to verse 31, which verse 31 is from where, Dena?
That's from Genesis.
It's from Genesis chapter 2. Go ahead and read the passage for us, and then we'll all give a take and see what we can come up with here on what Paul's goal, what the Holy Spirit's goal is in this passage.
Good. Okay. So he picks up verse 31, quoting Genesis 2. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband.
All right. There we have it. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, love your wife like Christ loved and died for the church. And then, boom, for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. And then, this is a profound mystery. Josh, what do you make of this? There's only 3 verses, a lot going on in here. You're sitting in your office, you're studying the Bible, you want to get the original meaning, the original intent of the Holy Spirit. How do you approach this passage?
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is there's such a tension between what I'm hearing from a cultural approach to understanding this passage today and the fact that it's actually anchored as a source text all the way back to Genesis chapter 2, which is pre-fall. So there's this tension of someone going, how dare you say in the modern age, anybody submit to anybody, we should all be able to just not, and it will be the best. And then you go all the way back to, but Genesis 2 was before the fall of humanity. So in perfect union with God and people, this was the plan. And the tension of that actually is really interesting to me because I was sort of torn. I'm sitting in my office, hypothetically, of course.
Right.
And it's assuming I have an office. And
assuming not the entire Auburn staff is in your office, which is usually the truth.
Well, Karsten, they're all in there. No, but I think it's just such an interesting thing. So oftentimes we are torn with trying to interpret the Bible in our modern day understanding. And this is such a good reminder to go, no. This was written to an audience who would have naturally understood this connection to like the original God and people connection. And that if we lose that understanding of looking at this, then we're going to come up with this really stunted version of what we were supposed to hear out of this. And that was the thing that I as I was literally studying this passage, I spent probably more time than I should have trying to process and digest that reality.
That's so good because, the classic saying is the Bible was written for us, but it wasn't written to us. Right. And I was struck just while we were reviewing this. I was struck at how he gives this little blip. It's like 2 verses. or 3 verses about wives submit yourselves to your own husbands. And then he goes on for like 1, 2, 3, 4, like a length of time explaining what it looks like for the husbands to love your wives. Why? Well, like as a wife, I would like a little bit more clarification about when I should submit and when I shouldn't submit. But in the cultural context, the controversial thing, the thing that needed clarification was not wives submit. It was husbands love and sacrifice for them and be willing to die for them.
Yeah, wives submit was old news.
Wives is like,
Yeah,
that we
that's
get
old
that.
news.
We understand that. It doesn't need clarification.
What are you really trying to say, Paul? We've heard that one before. Yeah.
Exactly. So he literally, it's like, this is the part that needed clarification. That's why he goes on, I think, for so many more verses. Husbands, you have to love your wives. Just like your wife owes you something, you owe your wife something. You have a specific thing that God has appointed you to do in her life. And if you don't play that role, then the marriage relationship gets messed up.
So I can hear a bunch of our listeners and watchers right now saying, well, what do you really think about should a wife submit to her husband? Well, okay, that was last week's podcast.
Go watch that podcast.
Go watch it because we really do break it down in detail on a spectacular podcast. Here's my take. I love what you said, Josh, about why go back to pre-fall. I think this is a summary statement. So, wives, submit to your husband as the head of the household, as Christ is the head of the church. Husbands, love your wives with gentleness and patience and all that stuff he's been saying before, all the way unto death. Okay. Then he says, if you do this, here's the goal you'll achieve, which was set out from the very beginning. The two of you will become one flesh.
Right.
The two of you will become united and harmonious. So he's saying, with the credibility I know you have in the Old Testament, Christian Jews, and the credibility you're learning, pagan, now Christian Gentiles, here we go. This is the target from the beginning. So again, the target isn't to make sure that the man has authority and gets his way all the time. The target isn't to make sure that the husband is never upset or the wife is never upset, or they've figured out who gets to change the oil and who has to unload. Paul's not saying that's not the goal. Yeah. It's a much bigger goal, right? That the two will become one flesh. Now, I also believe that not only does it's the goal of the marriage, when he says this is a profound mystery, it's the goal of everything. The reunification of everything under the kingdom of Jesus, the Christ of God. So what is it that Jesus came to do? He came to advance his rule and reign. So the goal of the bride of Christ being cleansed and washed and mature and gentle and peaceful, and verse 18 in chapter 5, the full of the Spirit, what is the goal of all of that? That we would become one body, one faith, one, in this metaphor, one flesh, that there would be harmony and unity where there's brokenness and chaos. So he's saying, married couples, this is the goal. And by the way, kingdom for the whole kingdom.
Yes.
And it does build off the idea that, the first half of the book of Ephesians is about unity, and the second half is maturity, which means showing unity. And this is like the paramount example of that.
Yes.
It's sort of the culmination. And I love it's classic Paul. He's like, okay, I'll give you the overarching summary. I'll give you some really practical examples because you guys need bullet points. Okay, husbands, check. Wives, check. Like it's all there. And then he goes back to, but honestly, it's such a mystery. I'm trying to figure it out as we go here. The humility that's found there is actually incredibly refreshing, especially given this temptation to go, okay, so here's like a broad brush, very general statement that I should build all of my theology around is found in this passage. It's like, well, he just then wrapped it up with this humility point that if we can come to some really strange conclusions above it without it.
Yeah, I think one of the problems we have with this whole section is that we want absolute clarity. On a Tuesday, when the couple is sitting down going over the budget and the son interrupts with a homework problem, what's the father's role? What's the
right?
And this is Dr. Bob Utley, the great, incredible Baptist theologian. We want clarity. God wants tension. The tension of mutual submission.
Yep.
The tension of the mystery that we are now. I love that. Paul is admitting here, I have thought about this. And I'm not done thinking about it. I am not done thinking about it. Dena, let me ask you this question. when we go back to Genesis chapter, I'm going to go to the apologetics right here. When we go back to Genesis chapter 2, I can already hear multiple people going, "Oh, Genesis, man. Okay, let's have this fight." What is the purpose and point of Genesis hermeneutically? What are we supposed to? It's okay to talk about everything, but what are we supposed to mainly be talking about when we get to the book of Genesis?
Yes. Well, wherever you land on what the book of Genesis says scientifically, everyone agrees this is an origin story. Origin stories are meant to give us the answers to the meaning of life. Why am I here? Why is there something instead of nothing? What is my ultimate purpose? What type of person, what type of world am I living in? That's what an origin story seeks to answer. And, the Genesis origin story is not the only origin story, but it is beautiful and unique. And it makes me sad that some people would be willing to chuck it all because of what they understand to be scientific discrepancies with the text. When the truth is that Christians throughout the years have had different understandings of what the book of Genesis says about the age of the earth, about the flood, about dinosaurs, about all of these things that we like to argue about. Don't let the scientific questions hang you up on not really grasping the origin story that God wants to communicate. Because he was communicating to the Israelites. He was trying to reveal to them who they were and who he was. And so he wrote this story to help them understand those questions. So I think we do a grave injustice to the text when we try to get it to answer questions that are not the questions that the original hearers would have been asking. Age of the earth? I don't know. Maybe that was in their purview, but what definitely was in their purview was, who am I and who is God? And I think Genesis speaks so beautifully to that. So I would plead with anyone that just wants to throw out Genesis, don't do it. If you throw out Genesis, the rest of the Bible is going to be so confusing.
If you decide that the book of Genesis was written as an origin story, and I love that because I'm a superhero guy.
Yeah.
I like origin stories.
Yes.
If you decide that, it's inexhaustibly wise.
Oh, so wise.
It transcends era, it transcends culture, transcends race, and it speaks to so many fundamental human ideas, and it's just profound. Is it wrong to ask is this a legend? Is this meant to be, fable? Is this meant to be scientific? I think all those are very interesting questions, and I think you'll be surprised at how many great answers come out of an honest look at this without lowering the inspiration of Scripture at all. But
absolutely.
If you only are worried about that issue, you miss so much. I like to say it this way, Dena. I think origin story is a perfect way to say it. This genre is about dysfunctional families and what causes dysfunction of families. And especially if you decide to not just put all your weight and time into the first 3 chapters, but if you look, the first family, there's a murder between the siblings. You get all the way up to Noah. He's a hero. Noah's incredible. Oh no, when Noah finds dry land, he immediately plants a vineyard and gets drunk. And then there's favoritism in that family. And of course, Jacob, favoritism, Isaac trying to steal all just one after another. If you want to feel great about your family,
just read
the book of Genesis. Okay, so and here's what I want to say. There's some practical stuff in here too. So this is a mystery. This is Paul kind of going, here's the big goal. One, I want you guys to have a marriage that really feels like one flesh. But packed in this verse 31 is, this one sentence is a whole marriage encounter conference, okay? So here's my favorite one, then I'll let you guys make a couple of comments on what you see in this verse. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. I can't tell you, 27 years, Josh, of working with college-age people. You do incredible with that age group. The amount of young married couples that have come before me in a crisis, and they're on year 1, year 2. They've had a couple of Christmases and a couple of Easters and a couple of summers together, and we got a problem. What's the problem with this, that, and the thing? And it boils down to they haven't really left their mom and dad. That the husband is putting his mom over his wife. The wife is putting her dad over the husband, or some version of this. I remember one couple in particular where he was great, she was great. They did the pre-marriage counseling, amazing. Parents on both sides, amazing, mature Christian believers, great people.
Right.
And they get a year and a half in their marriage, and she gets diagnosed with a very, very serious illness to where she is hospitalized. It's a financial issue. It's a health issue. There's a good chance that she's going to die from this disease. And it became a very difficult thing letting this young husband be the husband. It became now, I'll say the story finished spectacularly. Everyone realized what was going on. They backed up. He stepped up. But I'll tell you, even with really mature and God-honoring people in a crisis, you can kind of go back to the family of origin in a way that's really destructive to your marriage. So there it is right there. At the beginning of mankind, a man will leave his father and mother. Boom. If you just leave and grow up, some really good things have a chance of happening. If you don't leave, some really, or the way Kelly and I say it, in-laws or outlaws, your choice. Okay. So what else do you guys see in here? I mean, there's so much in just this one sentence.
Well, go ahead, Josh.
No, please. I got thoughts to follow up.
I think that is sage advice. I also see Jesus leaving the Father in heaven and coming to earth in this verse. And this is just what the Old Testament does.
Yes.
It is always foreshadowing what was going to happen in the New Testament. So for this reason, a man will leave his father and mother. Jesus had no mother, but Jesus in heaven sacrificed heaven and came down to earth ultimately to come get his bride. So it's a little mini, what is the word I'm looking for? When Jesus came from heaven to earth, some big fancy theological word, doesn't matter. But what Jesus did.
You're talking about the appearance of Jesus in the Old Testament.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
foreshadowing.
yes. And it's so incredible here. I think this is just one of the reasons that it makes me sad that we lose the Old Testament because we're solidly in the New Testament right here. And if we haven't read, digested, understood, and believed the Old Testament, then we just miss moments like this. Jesus was willing to do this for us, to leave his Father, to be united with his bride. And we're his bride, the church.
Super good. I mean, I think even like Curt, you said, there's this practical meets mystery component here that Paul talks about. And, I think marital advice, what should you do? It's really funny when you wrap it up as a 20-something who's trying to figure it all out. But it feels like in some ways we're always there again and again as we're relearning through stages of life and marriage and then kids and then all the rest. But this idea of submission is such an interesting way for him to frame how to then understand like marriage, because submission versus or over perfection is such the tension all the time in my personal life. And then you put that over the top of a marriage, and you're like, this is a lot. Submission is ultimately where we find freedom. It's the ability to say, I would really like for it to go this way, but together we'll both give that up. And then we usually achieve something better together, where perfection is this, I gotta know, because then it proves to me and my family and everybody who's watching, I have figured out what I learned last time. And this like constant tension that's found between the two, I think is part of why you said going back to a family of origin makes so much sense. There's some safety there, whether it was a healthy family of origin or a really toxic one. Each of them would have reasons someone would revert to that, especially in this moment of perfection being the outcome, because we're not really sure where we're at anymore. And I think this sort of practical tension between submission and perfection as a marriage couple when you're supposed to leave, it really forces us, like you said, Paul goes, it's a mystery. I'm still working through it. And I think if you commit to doing that with your spouse, it's going to lead to a lot of progress in a healthy way.
Yeah. This might be way too reading into it or parsing it, but I look at it and it says you got three stages here. Number one, it's the leaving. Number two, it's the uniting. So the uniting is like, I tell all the young couples this. I say, listen, what you hear in pre-engagement counseling and what you hear in engagement counseling is really important. But I actually like mentor counseling in the first year of your marriage. because I say find one couple that has a great marriage that is above you in age significantly, and say, can we have dinner with you once a month this year? And then go to that dinner and say, is it normal when? Is it normal when? Because there's the leaving and then there's the uniting. And what does the uniting mean? The uniting means, how are we going to spend our money? Where are we going to go for Christmas? Your folks or my folks?
Yeah.
How are we going to argue? Kelly and I had to become united in how we argue because our origin family, my origin family, argued one way, very destructive. And her origin family didn't argue because they just left the room and slammed the door.
Yep.
It's also very destructive. So you can't put those two family of origins together. We had to become united in a different and third way.
Yep.
My family of origin had no gender roles. Guys did dishes and my sisters changed oil. There was none of that. We didn't even know that existed. Everyone had chores. And in Kelly's family, that was not the expectation. So we had to come together. In my family, one person cooked, the other person cleaned because there was 9 of us and you split it up. In Kelly's family, if you cooked it, you cleaned it. What are you doing leaving your mess out? Which I was really disappointed to learn that because I like cooking. So there's this coming together. So the first stage, leaving. Second stage, uniting. And then the third stage is become one flesh.
Yeah.
You become one flesh. You don't ever get there. So this is the old marriage adage that there is no such thing as a good marriage that isn't worked on. No matter how much it's love at first sight and soulmate feeling, it's, people say this thing, and now that I've been married 38 years, I really understand it. Like right around 30 years of marriage, I started to understand it. At 35, I think and that is, I love you now more than ever.
Mm-hmm.
Now I think about how much I loved Kelly at the very beginning, how passionate I felt about it, how excruciatingly painful it was to be separated from her. I love Kelly more now than ever, and that is because we've been through 30 different wars together.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, I just did this vow renewal for my dentist. and I said, do you guys want the traditional vows? And they said, well, let's do the I do thing because we had a Vietnamese wedding and you don't do I do. And now that we're Christians, we want to do that. But we don't want to say to have and to hold in sickness and because we've done that. We're not recommitting to that. So we want to write our own vows. I said, great, write your own vows. And what both of them did, it was so beautiful, is they went through all of the worst and best moments of their life together. Wow. And they vowed to go through any worst and all the best moments in the future.
Wow.
So they literally, she got sick. They had their kids and this happened to their kids and that happened to their kids that was wonderful. And then this happened financially. They were ripped off by someone in a business deal. And I loved you then and I'll love you if that happens again. And it was just, it was the becoming of one flesh. It was the constant work of submission that leads to greater unity. Just in a powerful power, like that's your whole marriage book right there.
Yes.
In one sentence.
Amen. I love the 32. He says, this is a profound mystery, but I'm talking about Christ in the church. And I think about the joy, the pleasure, and the bonding that happens when a husband and a wife become one flesh. And obviously we're talking about sex here. So obviously, if you're reading this out loud in church in Ephesus, you're like, wait, what? Like record scratch? Like Jesus is gonna, like, what are we talking about here? And that's why he says, this is a profound mystery. But essentially what he's saying is that what healthy couples experience, the intimacy they experience as husband and wife, is meant to be a pointer to what we are going to experience with Jesus. That joy, that pleasure, and that bonding that a husband and wife get to enjoy in the bedroom, we are going to get to enjoy in eternity from being united with Christ. And our language, Paul says, our language fails here, right? This is a profound mystery. Words are not adequately going to make this conversation anything but a little bit awkward.
Right.
But it's beautiful still. We can approach heaven knowing that every single pleasure here on earth is just a pointer to a greater pleasure that we will one day experience in heaven.
Well,
Amen.
and to that end, though, it's really beautiful language, right? The idea of God took out of Adam's side a rib, and like the joke of like, oh, so guys have one less rib, huh? Like that's not a real thing, by the way. Go get your ribs counted. But it's
your ribs
actually the
counted.
idea of pulling out of Adam's side, like his flesh, part of him was taken, and that without what was created on the other half, it wasn't a complete picture of the fullness of God. So to your point, this idea of this oneness in all the different categories, physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually, the becoming of one as the picture of Christ in the church is like, that's the part where I think this audience would have had the record scratch,
Yeah.
because it was like equating this idea of bringing a wife's value up to the level where it wouldn't be without this connection that the fullness of God could be reflected.
Yeah.
This idea that somehow the New Testament is diminishing the value of women is absurd if you look at it in that context. It's saying without this, you can't even have the fullness of understanding.
Think of all of our great stories where the man dies for the woman. Like, think of that. And how, like, we just know that that's how it was supposed to be, right? Like when
Did you think of Titanic just now?
I unfortunately did,
Okay,
because I
crazy.
hate that movie. But it's like we all
Move over.
We
Let
all
him on
know,
the
yeah.
I
piano.
just saw it for the first time like 2 months
Did
ago.
you really?
Apparently
Oh.
that's a
How
problem.
did that? Okay,
That's
well,
what my wife said.
Good.
There you go.
I have so many
I've
questions for
grown
you,
so
Josh.
much, apparently.
but think about it. Okay, like let's take Titanic. We get to that scene, and if Rose slides off and Leo gets on, we just know, right? Like, you die together, or he gets to sacrifice, or obviously, Rose, you move over and there's room for both to live. There is no part of us that says what should happen here is that the wife should die for the husband. We know it in our soul. So in a healthy marriage, what is supposed to be happening is that the wife is submitting to the husband dying, right? Is saying like, I'm going to let you play the role that God has assigned to you. And in an unhealthy, broken marriage, oftentimes what a woman experiences is, I'm submitting to a fallen person. He's not doing his role of dying. This submission is very painful. I think that's where the rub of this passage goes. But when we read it like Paul is saying, our job is just to submit to him dying. Sign me up for that, right? Like that, I want that marriage.
You okay with that?
I'm okay.
All right,
Shane
cool.
can die
I
for me.
also think
I
you
get
have to-
what I want.
Yeah,
Great.
you have to also bring into it, as he says this is a profound mystery. So son will leave the father and be united to the wife. They would all be thinking about the engagement legality of the first century. So we enter into a marriage contract. That's the official engagement season. Now I go off and I prepare a place for us to live. Usually my father's house. This is why Jesus says, I go to my father's house where there is room for you in John. So the profound mystery is this: Jesus left the Father in heaven, came, died for us, and now we are in a legal marriage bond with Jesus, and he's going to prepare a place for us. Where is that place? What will that place look like? When will Jesus come back to take us to that place? The wedding starts when the groom gets back. All right, house is set up. Let's have a party. So I'm sure the profound mystery of this is, as I am being persecuted in the city of Ephesus, one of the ways to look at the profound mystery of this is I'm being persecuted for being a Christian in the city of Ephesus. And I don't know when Christ is coming back. I don't know if it'll be tomorrow or at the very end of my life or after my life. I don't know any of that. But I do know that he is coming back for me the way a groom comes back for a bride. And so this is Paul speaking hope into them, that, the groom's away for now, but this is a profound mystery. Now, he does then go back in verse 33 and gets really, really practical. However, each one of you must love his wife as he loves himself. So he goes, husbands, take responsibility to the point of sacrificing yourself, to your point, Dena. And wife, you must respect your husband. I think what he's saying there is, wife, you need to honor the position of husband. You don't honor every decision every husband makes, because we don't enable sin. We don't enable abuse, addiction, adultery. But that position of husband and father needs honor, because it's so critical. It's so absolutely critical. And to your point, Josh, I think both are critical. I think the word in the Genesis there is literally side, not rib. And so Adam is split in two. When Adam comes back together, he is the one whole imago Dei, the image of God. But here, even though there's equal amount of sacrifice, equal amounts of submit to each other, it's slightly a distinction. And the distinction is love your wife to the point of death. Love your wife like she's your very own body. Wife, love your husband in a way that brings him honor. And I just think when that happens in a marriage, to your point, when I go, listen, there is no demanding of my way. There is no veto voting. There is no my way or the highway. It's all just how can I lead in sacrifice? And my wife says, how can I lead in honoring? Man, do we get to one flesh pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But you're also not talking about false harmony either. I mean, it's not
Right.
like, hey, everybody's hunky-dory and we get along and have no strong opinions. Like, I don't live in that world. Like, that's not me or my wife. And so I think this idea, too, of submission, sometimes we want to, like, make it into this thing that it's not. No, submission implies that we probably have disagreed at some point and yet intentionally choose not to just set it aside without actually processing that, but like there should be intentional proactive communication. There should be the ability to go, hey, based on this, I'm going to bring it here and go, I don't understand how I can get from here to there. Can we together help me struggle through how submission even, like, and it then increases the amount of communication. Oh, like all the stuff we know that should be a part of a healthy relationship. And so you look at the fullness of this idea of submission, and it's a beautiful picture of not just people who are throwing it out there and mailing it in, but people who are actually proactively engaged in processing difficult things and then coming to a place where they could choose to dig in and fight for, or they could choose to mutually decide together. And that's a beautiful picture.
Yeah. Mutually fight for or mutually fight against.
Yes.
Okay, so all right, let's get practical. I'll go first. How do you apply this? All this whole thing from verse 21 all the way down to verse 33. Wives, submit to your husbands. Husbands, die for your wives. This is a profound mystery. Here's my thought on this, on how to apply this. Stop trying to win. That's my application thought. And by the way, this is for single people too, because mutual submission in marriage doesn't start the first morning of your marriage. It starts every morning of your life. Yep. This is something we walk in as Christians. Clearly, verse 21 is an umbrella over all the relationships. And to learn how to get this cooperative mutual alignment, you have to walk in it right now. And the thought I've been just going over in my head is this. Jesus went through 6 trials, 3 before the secular authorities, the Romans, and 3 before the Jewish authorities. So we always think one big dramatic trial and they crucified him, but he was marched across town and he was judged 6 different times. In every single one of these trials, he did not defend himself. In every single one. Now you think about this, when he was a small boy and he came to the temple and he taught among the teachers as a small boy, they were astonished at his knowledge and ability to speak. Then in his whole ministry, they're trying to trip him up left and right with legal questions, and he turns their tricks and their trip ups into tricks and trip ups against them. And he always wins the day and makes a higher point. There is no better communicator, legal understanding of the Bible, no better debater that ever lived than Jesus Christ. And yet he didn't use a single one of those skills against false accusations, false witnesses that were drummed up and clearly false. He could have destroyed every one of those trials. But instead of winning the trials, he made the decision to win us.
Wow.
So good.
And that's the profound mystery of mutual submission. I don't want to win the argument. I want to win you. I don't want to be seen as right. My children go, oh, Dad's right. I want my children to say, I love my dad. I honor my dad because he's so easy to honor because he's, that's the goal. It's not to win. My marriage got a lot better, and it is a lot better every time I remember, just don't win. You don't need to win. Stop trying to win.
So good.
All right, follow that, Dena.
Yeah.
I'm just-
Go for it.
How would you apply this, Dena?
Well, disclaimer, go watch the last podcast. If you're currently walking through adultery, or if your spouse is committing adultery, is involved with addiction, or is in any way involved in abuse, this is not the passage to meditate on and apply. So with that disclaimer, I find as a wife that oftentimes I have a critical spirit. Like, Shane is a great man.
Yeah, I can't. No one has a critical spirit against Shane.
Except me, right? I often just find myself cataloging his flaws. It's like, I know what he could do to be a better person, to be a better father, to be a better, whatever. And I just think that is so antithetical to what this verse has called me to do. So I just encourage you to, if you are a wife, if you're married, to go into God's presence and to say, God, do I have a critical spirit towards my husband? If so, please dismantle that. I trust you to correct him. I trust you to lead him. And my job is I'm going to look for the good in this human and ask God to give you eyes to see your spouse as God himself sees him.
Very good. Very good. And I like the disclaimer. I should have said that same disclaimer over mine.
Yeah.
This is not enabling sin. This is assuming that both partners in a mature way want to go after God. Josh, last word. And thanks for being on the episode today.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'd say that when it comes to the marriage conversation, there's 2 levels of marriage, and super practically keeping these out in front of us. Level 1 is attachment, and level 2 is skills. Attachment being how connected are we? Do each of us feel seen, valued, heard? These kinds of things. And so often what's easiest to do is to focus on developing better skills. Let's learn how to argue well. Let's learn how to manage money well. They're all tactical skills that we learn at the cost of fighting for being connected. I've got 2 kids under 10 in my house. Let me tell you, it's really easy to download an app, share access, and work on our budget that's AI infused. Come on, somebody. But it's a lot harder to get babysitting time and then actually make in that budget time to go and money to spend on a dinner, and then like going, and then you get there and fighting through we haven't done this long enough since the last time, and like, how do we do this again? Like, what did we used to talk about when we had like time and stuff? Like,
and now one of you is resentful that you haven't done it for a long time.
And now we're cataloging. Like, Dena's here.
Yes. And honestly, you're just looking at each other saying, both of us, we just want to go take a nap.
Yes.
Like, as much as you're great,
Like,
I just want to fall asleep right now.
I know we're supposed to have a date nap.
We just hit on
Date
Dena's
night.
like love language right
Well, I
here.
just made up a new phrase. I say we're both supposed to have a date night. I said date nap. That is something
Whoa.
you should do.
Praise.
Like
Okay.
you go
Can
to
we
that
write
room,
the
I
book?
get the
Are we
couch.
allowed to
Talk
do
to
that?
Kevin.
It's legal?
Date nap.
Then we're going to have a date
That
nap
sounds-
soon. Okay.
Okay, what's your practical advice?
But
This
the
is great.
practical advice is that while skills are vital and important, do not forsake the focus on attachment. Take the
So good.
time to remain connected to your spouse, because then the skills will be useful. I heard Kevin Thompson joke the other day. He said, man, people who really focused on skills and never on attachment were great at arguing while getting a divorce.
Ooh.
That's so good.
If we're not attached, we don't share the idea of us mutually fighting for what's best and submitting becomes an exercise in a bunch of boxes to be checked and not a relationship anymore.
So
And
good.
I'm speaking to myself here mostly, guys. This is what I needed to hear.
I'll
So
send
good.
this to Courtney so she can consume your confession.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Likewise,
joining us.
Shane.
Yeah, I'll
We
send it
went
to
a
Shane
little
too.
long on this one, but this is such a profound and amazing topic, and I'm sure we could go even longer on this. I want to encourage you to spread the word, especially these last 2 episodes, to any married couple that you have. Very, very just profoundly, what's important in marriage is being happy. And a lot of people, there's a lot to said about I'm just happy. And there's a lot of people that are missing that happiness because they don't understand the profundity of what the Holy Spirit's put here. Next week, Kevin Thompson is going to join us, and we are going to have a conversation about Ephesians chapter 6, like the first 7 or 8 verses, which includes instructions to children, instructions to fathers, and instructions to slaves and masters. Obviously, a very, very intense issue. Is the Bible pro-slavery? Was Paul pro-slavery? We're going to deal with all of those topics next week. Don't miss out. We probably maybe we'll call an audible and bring in like 3 other voices because there was such a great conversation today.
So good.
This podcast comes out of our sermon prep at all the Bayside campuses. And we had this conversation today on the passage, and man, that should have been the podcast because it was amazing.
Yeah.
But join us next week. And especially if you've ever heard someone that has these questions, a lot of times when people deconvert, this idea of how God handled slavery is a predominant idea in their deconversion. So if you know someone who needs this information, definitely like, share, follow, and make sure that they get the podcast. And as always, thank you for giving us your time here on the Bible Study Podcast.